This is the Ace Founder Podcast.
Welcome to the show, Marius. It's an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me, Javi.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I've been chatting to so many cyber experts recently. Something I didn't realize how much of a geek I am when it comes to these things, actually. But I've been enjoying these convos way more than I thought I would. And it's awesome to have another seasoned expert like yours. You're more on the CISO side of things, the virtual CISO. And we're going to be diving deeper into what you do over at your company. And speaking of, I always like to allow my guests to introduce themselves. Could you give us a little bit of a background about you, what you do, and how you got into cybersecurity?
Yeah, sure. So I probably have a kind of non-traditional path into it. During university, I was studying engineering, but I was doing some physical security work on the side, and that kind of became a thing. But I very quickly understood and realized that in UK, unless you go army buddies, you're never gonna reach a sort of a leadership positions in physical security. So it came a decision, I always been kind of, I guess, technically inclined, but I needed to make an idea where to go next. So I took kind of those physical security knowledge and idea and just kind of moved that into the digital world. And that's why I've been kind of a big advocate. I've been talking a lot about this. I essentially, there was no university, there was no boot camps. I just built my own self-learning path and, spent 8 months just literally non-stop studying and landed my first cybersecurity role. So I started my career working in security operations centers, and I was very intentional, I guess, in my career because I wanted to get into leadership, but I wanted to go around and pretty much explore every avenue of cyber. So I started working in SOCs. I then moved into managing and architecting and building SOCs for organization. Then I moved into cloud security engineering, cloud security architecture. I went on to move then kind of build DevSecOps frameworks, DevSecOps and application security strategies for businesses, pen testing strategies. While I was doing my master's, I wrote my thesis about how to build security operations centers, leveraging MITRE ATT&CK and making sure that it aligns to the threats that are relevant to your organization, as well as studying digital forensics. So I kind of ticked pretty much every box until I got to a leadership position where I have been for the last 3 years or so. So I'm a CISO for fintech, as well as run my own business where essentially, I kind of saw a gap in the market where I think especially smaller sort of SMB market businesses are really struggling to understand the cyber risks and what it's needed to, align the cyber strategy to the business goals and how we can, prevent that, the threats and risks materializing without, just plugging and buying any tool that the vendor, promises is going to solve all your problems.
There is a lot of that I'm noticing. Everybody is just trying to sell, capitalize on people's, do I want to say ignorance, or people's lack of understanding of and that's why we've got experts like you. But that's such a fully packed background. I'm thinking is MP Cybersecurity is that besides the virtual CISO that you do, is MP Cybersecurity your other thing? Is that the main business?
Yeah, so I kind of do a couple of things. So I kind of run, as I say, virtual CISO, fractional CISO kind of business, and trying to help businesses to build mainly cyber strategy. And I think as you just kind of talked a bit, I think the main thing which we're trying to remove is it's not necessarily ignorance, but there's a lot of what we call FUD. Vendors are selling their tools based on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And especially now with the proliferation of AI, there is this big promise and kind of marketing push that as long as the cybersecurity tool has AI, then it's gonna remove all your problems. And I still think based on the business, sometimes cybersecurity doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg, but just doing fundamentals and setting up the right processes and building the culture of understanding and accountability and responsibility can move the needle a lot. Because that's where the real gaps is. I don't want to talk too much. I think everyone's talking about these days about AI, but it's just about understanding. I think again, the similar thing now. Race towards AI adoption. Every business is adopting AI, but most of them do not understand the cyber risks that they are undertaking with moving into that adoption. So, for example, one of the missions that I always say to cyber professionals, AI is not people replacer. It's a tool, which I class it as force multiplier. So it allows us to do a lot more with the less time. But I always say AI is not going to replace people, but people who know how to use AI will replace those who can't. So that's we are an important inflection point where if you're working in cybersecurity, you need to learn how AI works, how to secure it, because those skills will be invaluable in the years to come.
Very, very interesting. And I like how you put it, like, because there's a lot of fear, like you said, AI is going to replace our job, AI is going to take our job. But I like how you frame it. It's not like it's going to, if you know how to use it, you're going to replace somebody that doesn't know how to use it. Very, very interesting. I do wonder, though, because of now you could do way more with less. Does that mean, let's just say 100 people were doing customer service now and a few people, does that mean one person is going to replace that whole 100 people in that team, or what does that look like?
Not necessarily, but I think it definitely can condense and allow smaller businesses to achieve more. But I think there's a key point where I want to make as well, which I think people are not talking
About
enough about
okay.
it. AI has lately been held in the hands of engineers. And engineers has expertise in engineering, but you just mentioned customer service, and I see this all the time now. Businesses are replacing whole customer services team and dropping AI agents,
Yeah.
but these agents are run by engineers. Engineers have no clue about customer service. And that's where the real gap and difference is, because you can replace the whole customer service team, but the customer services expertise leaves your company, and you give an AI agent in the hands of engineering. So, yes, people can do more, but you still need expertise in a specific field where you are deploying agents and AI applications, because engineers don't have a clue what customer service looks like. So, if you remove the whole customer service team, you lost. And I've seen this many times, especially in the AI applications where it has customer touch points. You know, the whole process becomes robotic, unhuman like, and customer starts leaving, and then businesses are backtracking because, oh shit, we made a mistake.
That is very interesting. I think I've come across some of that stuff. Like some of these big guys, like Facebook and the rest. They let go of a whole team of, I forget who it was, customer service, but then had to now bring them back on. So I never thought about it that way, because you tend to think these AIs are good enough to. That's why they are replacing teams like that. But yeah, you're right. It's now being handled by engineers that maybe built it, but they don't necessarily know the intricacies of of those. Very, very interesting. But I guess being in your career has spanned so many years now. I'm sure you've seen you've seen the transition from where you started, what it looked like when you started till now. How Let's talk a little bit about that. How has that been for you, watching this transition, and what's the current state of things now?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting because obviously technology adoption kind of changed a lot of that,
Yeah.
and it's really accelerating and moving into various avenues. There's been kind of I guess key points in the last few
Mm,
years. 2020
mm,
pandemic. We worked at the offices where there was a perimeter.
mm,
We had to secure the perimeter, and all of a sudden, your whole career shifted from trying to secure 3,000 people in the office. We're trying to secure 3,000 people working from 3,000 different locations, and that all of a sudden changed. We introduced zero trust, introduced access controls, all of the whole thing shifted. The same thing is happening now with AI. So it's really interesting. But I think I always say cybersecurity is such an industry that in sometimes in some ways it attracts people who are there for the wrong reasons. I think people read the headlines, oh, six-figure salary, you do one course and all of a sudden
Yeah,
it's easy.
experts.
But I always say, cybersecurity is the one career where you need to be a lifelong learner. And if you're not comfortable with that, you're going to struggle. Secondly, again, you can be a great technical person, but we very rarely talk about communication, influencing skills. You can have an amazing idea, but if you can't convince those around you that this is the best idea, your idea will not reach a day of light. And that's often overlooked because the people who rise the career ranks the best are these the ones who can communicate, can influence and show their technical prowess. But not only that, especially when you get to leadership level, it's not about your technical acumen, but it's about your translation, technical controls, business asks, and all of that into risk board conversations about how does that prevent business from moving forward? What kind of risks did it create? Because as soon as you start talking vulnerabilities, patching, numbers, threats, you are no longer listened to.
Why is that? Is that because that message has become saturated, or why? Because I think that's it.
Not only that, I think when you talk technical, you lose the board and executives. They're not technical people. You need to learn and understand how
I
to
see.
translate that in business risk terms. These people want to understand. Yes, you have 1,000 vulnerabilities, but what does that mean to the
I
business?
see.
Where is the gap? You know, you want to talk. For example, I always say you want to talk trends. You want to talk which of these vulnerabilities needs to be fixed. Which of these can prevent the platform from serving our customers? Which one has the regulatory implications? Because especially when you're reporting to the board, and there's a great. I can actually probably plug in a good friend of mine just sent the book. Antonio Barroso is about talking about how to become a boardroom CISO, and there's a lot of talk about board has two kind of roles. They have a fiduciary role, which means about their obligations to compliance and regulatory, and then strategy. So your message has to be tailored so it allows them to do their job better. And I think whenever you go into technical terms, you kind of lose them.
Very, very interesting, and that makes a lot of sense because you're spot on. Even when you're even speaking to a business owner about stuff, certain things, you have to communicate it in a way they will understand, basically, and so that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. And I like that you said it's a lifelong learning thing because, as you said, that I was thinking like AI is 3 years in mainstream. If you didn't study about, or if you didn't prepare for this AI, if you weren't learning about it, you'd be left behind. And things move very quickly in this
Yep.
space. Who knows? I was talking to a previous guest, and she was talking about quantum. That quantum is coming, and who knows where that would lead down the line for us. So this I can appreciate that. So is this something you do? Okay, actually, with clients that you work with, you talked about SMBs. Do you work with any particular niche, or is it are you like broader?
I try to not negate any help that anyone
Needs?
needs because
Okay.
I think most cyber advice and expertise can be pretty much industry agnostic because when you operate business, there's only a few things that change. You know, yes, you might have industry specific regulations, but it's still a regulation. As long as you are aware and understand, whether it's financial services and what FCA requires, or whether it's you're working with government and what is the need and push for cyber essentials and things like that. It's just understanding the driving forces and really understanding the business, how they operate, what is their goals. But kind of starting as a always say starting with fundamentals and basics that it could be kind of relevant across the board because I always say yes, you can plug in a great AI kind of security application and tool, but unless you go the culture right, the understanding, the basics, just starting with things like MFA patching, just shoring up these simple things that can remove so much headache.
Very interesting. I'm curious, from a tech startup point of view, what would you say is the biggest threat or the biggest thing they should worry about while they're building their their solution?
I think I'm going to lead into one thing which I've been talking recently. Everyone heard about, this mythos, or now it's been renamed as Glasswing, and everyone's panicking and getting
Hmm.
scared. Again, that's a vendor marketing fud and nonsense. Now, I'll tell you a little story. So, yes, it found a 28-year-old vulnerability, and it done great. But what is missed from the headlines is, to find it, it used $10,000 worth of tokens.
Okay.
Now, that's a lot of money.
Hmm.
And people need to understand that most of the hacking groups, they still use simple business terms such as return on investment.
Okay.
None of them are going to spend that vast amount of money.
Hmm.
And secondly, you need to understand how hackers operate. Why would they use expensive 0 days if you have social engineering, which still works day in and day out? So simple example. Everyone's probably lately heard about Cat and Spider. So people who hacked Marks and Spencers and all of that. Now, they are a bunch of teenagers, 16 to 18-year-olds, made up of English-speaking people from Canada, US, and UK. Now, their mode of operandi is they will get an info stealer, so essentially a software that steals and leaks credentials. So they will get a credentials, even if they're 5 years old, out of date.
Hmm.
They will get credentials from a company. They use AI voice clone to change the voice into an 18-year-old girl. They're
Hmm.
great English speakers. They will call the company help desk and ask to reset the password.
Oh.
Chances are, after a couple of tries, they will be successful. So they don't hack. They will log in,
Hmm.
and then they will go for an exercise to elevate permissions and then drop ransomware and go away. They don't need these crazy hacking mythos models for that.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. That makes it even more scary because of that. That is literally just using your own systems against you, basically.
Yeah.
Wow, this is crazy. And does this make your job difficult, or you guys' job difficult? Trying to
It
fight
it
this.
does but sometimes it's just about communicating, and I think that's the biggest problem. We can never neglect the importance of accountability and responsibility. Cybersecurity is everyone's in a company is responsible for cybersecurity.
Mm.
Because user can be either intentionally or unintentionally
Mm.
malicious. Clicking on a link, uh, deploying you know shady software, and all of a sudden that becomes an entry into our company. So awareness and spreading of accountability and cybersecurity culture across the whole business, that's one of the most important things that we can never overlook. Because you can have the best tools possible, but unless people understand their responsibilities and practice safety, that can all go out of window.
That's so true. So it reminds me of some of these movies you watch back in the day. When the dreaded USB, when you can sneak a USB inside the system. How do you then, like, for a small business, with a small team, maybe less than 50 people, how do you now ensure protocols are followed and stuff like that? How is there some kind of a monitoring system, or how would you recommend they go about that?
Yeah, I think obviously building security operations center is cost prohibitive for a small
Mm.
business, but there are great companies and managed security service providers that can kind of help you and guide you in that. Because I think the biggest kind of, I guess, step up point where the problem is, most of the businesses now operate online. They work 24/7. So your team might be working Monday to Friday 9 to 5. So having that operational oversight 24/7 and having trusted managed security service provider who can monitor all of your endpoints and respond to incidents on your behalf, that's kind of, I guess, the way to go forward.
Mm.
But it's just about, I think, even the biggest thing is about, I think, knowledge, just understanding. People sometimes do not even understand and comprehend that their actions could lead
Mm.
and could be detrimental to the business and had adverse, points. So it's about, establishing processes, even simple things like, if you get an email for an invoice, you have a way to verify that this is a legitimate invoice. Somebody calls you and asks you for transfer money? Do you have a way and a code word to verify? Because now with AI voice cloning, and you can be in a call, we've seen this, people being in a call with a so-called CTO who didn't actually exist and, asking for transfer. It's about, establishing those processes and checks and balances, just for the simple things about how to know and how to verify these things. And secondly, I think more importantly, which we can't neglect, is about building a culture in a business where every employee feels safe to challenge. Because the biggest thing is that's why most of the hackers will target CEO, CTO, and senior leadership. Because if the email or a ask come from them, the chances are nobody's going to challenge them.
That's a good
But you need to
point.
be responsible to build a culture to say, look, if some suspicious invoice comes from me, you are okay to challenge and question it. Because that removes so much risk and problems. You need to build that culture for people to be comfortable to do that.
That's such a good point. I never even thought about that because you're spot on. Like, nobody wants to lose their job or get in trouble with anything. So you don't want to. Interesting. I guess this is where the education side of maybe your work comes into play, where you teach
Yeah.
CEOs how to build that culture. Interesting, interesting. Oh wow, this is tricky. I guess with cyber, then you tend to cover. There's a lot to cover on a broad scale in terms of protecting a business. You have to, even your own solution itself has to be secure, and then your internal team has to also be secure. So it's like a two major parts of operations to cover. Very, very interesting. Wow. So okay, so in terms of this now, what do you find yourself uh, continue doing? Like, is there something that you find in common when it comes to small businesses that they keep a mistake that they keep making?
Yeah, I think it's just, as we kind of talked to, education is the
Big,
big
big
part, but
point.
then it's about, just simple things and teaching and understanding. It's about walking through, operations and what they're doing and showing the gaps. It's just simple things. I'll, tell you a little story. So I was helping one business who, thought, they hired an office block, the whole floor, which is all glass windows, and they said, oh, we're going to put a glass room in the middle where it's going to be our boardroom, where we're going to have our executive meetings. I was like, yeah, great, that's fine. But then obviously they didn't want anyone to listen in. So obviously we deployed, an access control and this and that. And then they obviously dropped in blinds in there. Now, and that's why sometimes as I talk about ignorance or misunderstanding, I guess. So because they were lazy to go and close blinds by hand, they decided, oh, we're going to buy a blind remote controller from Amazon, from China, and drop it on our corporate network, and we're going to use it on our phones to control it. And sometimes people don't even think about it when you talk through that scenario and ask them, do you think there might be a risk in there
Somewhere.
somewhere? It's just kind of simple examples where can people go a length and then kind of fail at the last step
Yeah.
because they overthought about where they procured that one little app could be, that could come with default credentials or dodgy, embedded software from malicious country and things like that. So
Wow. So much to think about. Man, I could talk about this all day. But as we wrap up, I always like to get from my guests, like, where do you see this industry in 5 years from now? What do you think is going to be drastically different?
Oh, yeah, I need to have a crystal ball to do that. I think with AI, we can't even
Yeah.
predict 3 months ahead, and 5 years is hard to say. I'll tell you a couple of kind of broad strokes, I think. Obviously, AI is definitely here to stay, and AI is going to be a powerful tool that's going to help us defend better. I definitely don't see it as a danger. I see it as advantage and help, and especially because AI is removing currently and solving the problems that I think are the biggest burden. So, for example, take Security Operations Center. It's kind of doing the low hanging level one tasks that people would find menial and tedious. So it's I think it has a way to remove burnout and stress and monotony in the work and let people focus on a really interesting incidents and solve intricate problems. Secondly, I think the one thing which I kind of mentioned earlier about offices and how everything changed, I think identity is becoming the new perimeter of cybersecurity. So it's no longer office or a network; it's identity. And I think especially with the proliferation of AI, most of the businesses now are outnumbered human identities to non-human identities about 80-1. So there is API keys, there's agents have identities, all kinds of, and these identities and secrets are all over the place. So securing them and understanding where they are, how to rotate them and how to protect them, it's a big task in the near future that businesses will need to tackle and understand how to solve. So non-human identity and their risks are rising, and it's becoming, I think, second or third biggest attack vector now, behind sort of social engineering and ransomware. But it's only going to grow. And I think the importance of cybersecurity and correct culture adoption. I think there's going to be, we kind of going back in circles. I think there's always going to be a great tools that going to come and really help us, but tools are not sort of the end solution, because unless you have the right people and the right processes, technology always comes third. So and especially the message, I think most of the chat and chatter is lately, is AI gonna nuke the cybersecurity industry? I definitely don't think so, and I think there's still a shortage of talent, and people need to still work and build a great careers. There's nothing to be worried about in that space.
Very interesting. I'm surprised that it's even a concern for cyber, because I would have thought that you guys wouldn't be worried about AI at all because of it's.
We don't worry, but I think it's just the tone and the messaging across the industry. People who are not in cyber and are looking out to go in, they're scared and worried, or maybe somebody told them some nonsense, and I think that's the kind of the messaging is. But we're not worried.
Really good, really awesome. Marius, as we wrap up, we've come to the end of an awesome chat. Totally enjoyed this. I always like to ask for one final tip for our audience. If you could leave one startup founder something he needs to know or take away from this regarding cyber security and threats, would that tip be?
I think is a couple of things, especially AI is great and it can solve a lot of your problems. But I would say if you're thinking about adopting AI, seek cybersecurity professional expertise just to walk through the steps about how to prevent this thing getting out of hand, especially now with agentic workflows, and especially stuff like MCP. You got now Claude Co-work, you got was it OpenClaw that was going around circles. Specifically even the people who built it said that thing is not for non-technical people because it's over permissioned and it has a way to cause real danger for businesses. If anyone heard the news how Vercel got hacked, they got hacked because a person deployed Claude Co-work on their machine and gave him access to everything, and all of a sudden they got hacked. So just be cautious and be aware. Yes, AI is going to be great, but seek an expertise and expert how to set it up properly and how to adopt it with the business risks in mind.
I love that. And just to make sure I understand you clearly, you're talking about, say, if somebody wants to adopt a tool, you get a separate AI cybersecurity expert. You don't rely on the vendor's advice or stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. For example, any kind of tool, especially as I say, especially these tools now, Cloud Core Work, OpenClaw, they have a way and access to your machine, so they can write files, they can do all kinds of things. So that's where the real risk is. If you're just using, Claude on the web, it's all fine.
Brilliant.
But the access into the machines, that's the real risk and danger. And I say seek independent professional advice who can help you set up processes and properly onboard and limit its agent access and exposure.
Love it. And is that something you help clients with as well?
Yeah,
Oh, awesome,
yeah, we do.
awesome. We've come to the end of our awesome chat. Let's say any of our viewers is watching this and would like to work with you or get learn more about what you do. What's the best way for them to do that?
Obviously, they can find me on LinkedIn, Marius Poskus. They can check out our website, mpcybersecurity.co.uk. That's kind of the main things, I think, or they can obviously find my email as well. They can always drop a note or a message. Happy to, to discuss and help anyone that we can.
Love it. And we're going to include all of that in the show notes and under this video as well. Marius, once again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an awesome chat.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me, and great to meet you, Javi.